Hello, this is a wellness webinar, and today we're going to be talking about nutrition and the heart. So specifically how these two align and how we can incorporate specific nutrition to help our heart. So just our agenda today, we're going to be talking about understanding heart disease, good versus bad fat. So we're going to be talking about lipid levels, proper nutrition, and then any questions and comments you may have. So what is heart disease? You probably have heard of coronary heart disease or just heart disease, heart failure in general. And we're going to talk about later, it's the leading cause of death in both male and females. But essentially what it is a narrowing of the small blood vessels that supply blood and oxygen to the heart and essentially to all of the body. But specifically, the coronary artery is narrowing as well, which is a huge artery in our body. So more about heart disease. What usually happens with this, and we're going to talk about this more with lipids and fat levels as well, but how the narrowing of the artery starts is caused by a condition called atherosclerosis, and this occurs when fatty material, which is called plaque, builds up in the walls of our arteries, and essentially that causes it to narrow. I like to say a good analogy is if you think of your kitchen sink, you normally don't dump like bacon grease or ground beef or any kind of meat you're cooking that has a grease. You do not dump that down the drain, and the reason why is it can cause buildup in your drain and cause a narrowing of your drain. And that's similar to what we're going to talk about nutrition later, because certain lipids, certain grease, certain fats can cause a narrowing of your arteries, excuse me, with plaque buildup. So I just always think that kitchen sink is a good analogy. And then as the coronary arteries narrow, the blood flow to the heart can slow down or stop, which can cause chest pain, angina, shortness of breath, heart attack, and several other symptoms. So as I already said, it's the leading cause of death for both men and women, but also what puts you at higher risk for any kind of cardiovascular disease in general. You can see those high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and smoking, they all lead to an increased risk. And also if you have a family history, I will say as well, with coronary artery disease, always talk to your doctor about that as well. So talking about lipids, so lipid is a fat, and if you ever go get your blood work, which I hope you do, you'll see two different types of lipids right away on your blood work, and that's your HDL and your LDL. So we're going to talk about your HDL first. This is your high density lipoprotein. Also, as you see, the good cholesterol. So this is generally, excuse me, usually the one, unless you know your BMI or blood pressure is too low, usually the one metric that we want to see higher because it's a good cholesterol, and essentially it carries LDL, which we're going to talk about next, the bad cholesterol, away from your artery walls. Essentially, I like to call it a sweeper. It kind of sweeps out, kind of dusts out, cleans out the bad cholesterol in your arteries. And high levels of HDL also have been found to may reduce the risk of heart disease. So essentially by high, we want this 60 milligrams or above. You're considered at a major risk factor if you're 40 or less. And generally I see, just to give you a tidbit, I see males run a little bit lower, but also this is, genetics plays a huge factor into both your HDL and your LDL, so your cholesterol. So sometimes it can be kind of harder compared to others to increase your HDL. But exercise is always a great way to increase it, as well as eating some good fats that we're going to talk about later. And then your LDL, this is the bad cholesterol. This is what can build up in your arteries, that plaque, and prevent the blood from getting to your heart and elsewhere. And generally, we want this to be generally less than 100, really. Some doctors say 120, different metrics. But if your LDL is above 160, you're definitely at an increased risk of cholesterol adhering or sticking to those vessels, which can cause the plaque and build up. Some more lipid profiles, your triglycerides. So these are also a lipid, but these have a lot to do with sugar. They're related as well. So it's a type of fat found in your blood vessel. Typically, we want this to be less than 150. Sometimes you can see these in higher. I've seen these, super high, and a lot of that has to do with how much sugar and fast food you're eating. But high triglycerides are especially a problem combined with high HDL and low HDL. It's kind of like all of your lipids are off, and that can cause a lot of adhering to the arteries. And then cholesterol in general, your total cholesterol usually will be labeled on blood work, but it's a waxy substance found in the body. And so having a high bad cholesterol means you have too much LDL cholesterol in your blood. So it's generally related to your LDL. This can essentially lead to a heart attack or stroke, as it says. But the interesting thing that I think is interesting, it says only about 25% of cholesterol comes from the foods you eat. So essentially about the other 75% is made by the body. So genetics, family history, just like we were talking about with the HDL, plays a huge factor into this as well. So kind of taking it with a grain of salt, knowing there are some things you can control, like your nutrition and exercise, but some of this is kind of, it's in your DNA, it's in your blood. You're not going to be able to sometimes get it as low, maybe as someone else who doesn't have a family history of this. So just to kind of give you a little graph to break it down. So this is cholesterol levels, the numbers. So that breaks it down to desirable, borderline, and high risk. This is for your total cholesterol. So we generally want it less than 200. And then this is just another thing to talk about. There are 4 major dietary fats, essentially in the foods we eat. And the red dots are the bad fats and the green dots are the good fats. So we're going to talk about all 4 of these in the next few slides. So talking about the good fats first. So these are monosaturated and polyunsaturated fats, and they tend to be more liquid. So think of olive oil, vegetable oil, and sometimes even vegetable oil you just need to read the labels because some types cannot be as good for you, but essentially more liquidy fats. And then bad fats, these are the saturated and trans fats, and they tend to be more solid. Like a stick of butter. I will say butter not necessarily in of itself isn't bad. Don't watch this and go home and throw all your butter out. Just having it in moderation, obviously. And then more about bad fats. They obviously raise the LDL levels in your body. I will also say another bad fat would be Crisco or lard. High levels of blood cholesterol can increase obviously your risk of heart disease and stroke because that's related to your bad cholesterol and adhering to those artery walls. They go hand in hand. And the last point, many foods high in saturated fats are also high in cholesterol. So this also in turn raises your blood cholesterol. So it's kind of all like a vicious cycle. So we kind of want to make sure that step 1 is to watch your LDLs, and hopefully that will the risk of you having heart disease or a stroke, and then also obviously lower your blood cholesterol as well. So you might be thinking, okay, what's some more examples other than butter, lard, and Crisco? So here's a good outline of some most common examples of food and desserts that cause your LDL, your bad cholesterol, to increase. So you can see some different meats, especially beef, lamb, pork, poultry with the skin. So think of like, chicken or turkey, that skin can cause more, especially if it's fried, can cause more bad cholesterol to be in your blood. There you can see lard, cream, butter, dairy made from whole or reduced fat milk. Yeah, even reduced fat milk can have some bad cholesterol. I will say dairy doesn't mean you need to cut dairy out of your diet. Maybe you do for other reasons, but having it in moderation, just like all of these things, is so helpful. And then, of course, the desserts, pastries, biscuits, muffins, all the yummy things, French fries, fried chicken, as I mentioned. So just being mindful of this, like I said earlier, it doesn't mean you have to cut all these things out. Just having these in moderation. I always say watching what you eat daily is so important because that adds up to a huge consumption and especially factors into your blood work. So now about the positive things, the good fats. So generally we want to incorporate, as that first point says, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, as well as fish, especially fish like salmon, tuna. Those have a lot of good omega-3 fatty acids, which we're going to talk about, which definitely increase your HDL, your good cholesterol. Also, monosaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats, they can lower your bad cholesterol levels and are beneficial in moderation. And also monosaturated fats are also typically high in vitamin E, which we're going to talk a little bit in the next few slides. So some good fat examples, olive oil, canola oil, peanut oil, all the oils, you can read those there. Other sources that are great to snack on, an avocado. Even if sometimes people like to snack on these like with a little salt or pepper, put them on some toast, incorporate them in a salad, chicken salad, whatever it is. It's a great source of fat. It also actually, a lot of people don't know this, but avocados have more potassium than banana too. So peanut butter, this is a great source. I just always say read the back of the labels because a lot of times there can be some added sugar or just added, you know, junk as I call it into the peanut butter. So try to opt for a more all natural kind. And then any kind of nut or seed. Here you can see that's actually a date on the picture. It took me a while to figure out what that was, but that's the inside of a date. That's a great source of good cholesterol and good fat as well. So when shopping, this is just a great little tip, but this is the heart check mark. So this is found on foods that are known to meet the American Heart Association's criteria for saturated fat and cholesterol. So it's a good choice to help your heart. It's not going to be full of bad cholesterol, but you know, good cholesterol, and also just lower your risk if you continually eat those to have heart disease. So just a little image that helps when shopping. So more about vitamins and supplements. So as that first point says, it sometimes, depending on your body or the stage of life, it can be difficult to consume the recommended amount we want you to have for vitamins and minerals without taking a multivitamin or vitamins. So, but I always say, the second point says, consult your physician before you start this, because sometimes certain medications can lower or, you know, mess up with some vitamin absorption. So it's always a good idea to check with your doctor or your physician. Also, some people can just naturally more absorb the vitamins and minerals they need in food, and some people can't for whatever reason. So it doesn't necessarily mean everyone needs to take a vitamin. However, there are benefits to them, as we'll talk about. So vitamin E, we were talking about that earlier when we were talking about good fats, but this is an antioxidant, and essentially it protects your blood fat. So what we mean by that is it boosts your immune system. So it widens your blood vessels. It's called, it keeps your cholesterol happy, as I like that second point. So it prevents that blood sticking by, as I mentioned, widening your blood vessels. So like vitamin C, it keeps your blood cells and your fat non-toxic by not sticking to it. And then vitamin Bs, they can help lower sugar, digest fats. These are super helpful. And also your body absorbs vitamin B, the Bs, I'll say, better when you are consuming a little bit of fat. Obviously good fat, as we mentioned earlier. It can help consume it more. I know some people have low vitamin B12 or certain and vitamins, and that usually helps your body with your red blood cells and not being anemic. So just a little tidbit is try to eat it with a little bit of good fat when you have your vitamin. Vitamin C, as we mentioned, this is an antioxidant like vitamin E. It works with and recycles vitamin E, so they go hand in hand. Just like that, vitamin E, it keeps your blood vessels healthy. It raises good and lowers bad cholesterol. It speeds up your bowel, which is good. It reduces length and severity of colds. A lot of people take emergency or some kind of vitamin C, orange juice, and it improves general health. So magnesium, this is a great vitamin. I personally take this and I love this. It has several different benefits, but it's crucial for heart function. Magnesium and potassium, they regulate the heartbeat, so the heart rhythm. And magnesium is needed for over 325 reactions. So when we say reactions, we mean when you go into more of like neurophysiology of your brain and synapses that tell your body to communicate, it accounts for 325 of those, which is huge. So it also can help with sleep, several other different things. But as always, consult with your doctor before you take this. But as that picture says, leafy greens are a great way to naturally get magnesium as well. Omega-3 and omega-6. So these are scarce in the Western food supply, and they're key to heart, general, and mental health even too. So as we talked about, having a good source of good fats to increase your HDL, omega-3s are great to increase that. And then also mental health, there have been studies that have shown that it may help just boost your mood in general if you do consume more omega-3s. So like any kind of nut or fish, peanut butter. And then omega-6, this is corn, sun, staph, soy, and cotton. So rarely lacking, and it's often in excess in relation to omega-3 consumption. And it's most common vitamin overdose in Western diets over the recommended dosage. I personally think that's because of how much corn we have and things, but you can always do your research on that as well. But just think you want more omega-3s rather than omega-6s. So tips to lower cholesterol. So some of these are tips, they may not apply for everyone, but the first one, do not eat meat more than once a day. Fish and poultry are preferred over other like darker red meats like beef. But I always say this may not work for everyone. You may have smaller doses of meat, like a half a portion a day. So, but if you are at more of a higher risk for cholesterol, I will say, yeah, try to cut down on your meat consumption. Avoid fried foods, as we talked about with fried chicken. Try to bake or broil or even air fry them. Limit your intake of salt and monosodium glutamate, so MSG. Eat plenty of fiber. This helps your body digest everything. And then do not eat more than 4 eggs per week. Eggs are very high in cholesterol. Obviously, it's okay to eat eggs from time to time, but if you do notice your cholesterol is high and you do eat eggs every day, it might be helpful to go every other day, or to just find another breakfast substance that you can enjoy that has some protein. So other tips, limit desserts. Obviously, there's a lot, as we talked about with pastries and donuts, lots of high cholesterol in there. Avoid alcohol or drink in moderation. That will help. And then just another good tidbit, just in general, really, is to eat from all different food groups. And I will say even different colors. It can definitely give you the nutrients that you're missing out, as we talked about with the different vitamins. Consuming foods from all different food groups and colors can help with this. And then follow the recommendations on the food guide, which now that's found. It used to be My Pyramid, but now it's called ChooseMyPlate.gov. So if you go there, you can find some more information on that. And other recommendations, fat intake, here you can see of how many grams or calories you will need from fats, saturated fats, and trans fats. So this is just helpful because sometimes I think this can be tricky when reading a label. Okay, I know how many fats I need, but whoa, there's all kinds of different fats. So just breaking it down from this chart. And as you can see, only 2 grams of fat is needed for trans fat. So knowing that is usually the bad fat, the culprit, so trying not to have as much trans fat is very important. So these are just some references ever if you'd like to go to any of these in your free time for more research. If you do have any questions and comments, that's our email, support@preventioncloud.com, as well as our website, preventioncloud.com. I hope this webinar was helpful and you get some more tidbits to help lower your risk of cardiovascular disease. Thanks and have a great day.